Welcome back to Behind the Checkout. I'm John Lunn, CEO and founder of Gravy. Today's episode tackles a tricky question. In a world of liability shift where the risk moves from merchant to issuer, do anti-fraud checks still matter? Today I'm joined by Vanita Pandey. Vanita brings a deep industry expertise with leadership roles at Visa, PayPal, and CAF, and years of experience in fraud, identity, and risk management across global markets. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here, Vanita.
Thanks, John. Great to be here. And really, as you said, it's a really interesting topic.
So, fraud liability shift. Big win for merchants, been promised for a long time. So take part in certain programs, certain projects like 3D Secure, some cases Click to Pay, less risk, fewer chargeback, focus on conversion. But has it created a false sense of security? Like by saying you've got liability shift, the merchant sitting there going, well, don't have to worry about that anymore. No more risk management. It's someone else's problem. Did they stop investing in fraud, anti-fraud technologies? Or are there hidden risks? I think the big thing here, and we will talk about the VAMP program, which I'll let you go into a little bit details on, but it feels a bit like a punch in the teeth. You've got liability shift, and now we're going to punish you because your fraud rates are too high by reducing your auth rate. So big question, why don't we kick up there? Has it caused complacency?
So multiple layers to this, right, John? So it's at the end of the day, where does, we always, so I come from, Visa, and a lot of times the conversation would be what decides liability? And a lot of times it's about who has the power, right? At the end, and where is the dynamic? I mean, so back in the day, the card not present, I think the construct of card not present is also old, because card not present has become mainstream. It's no longer 10, 15% of the total transaction volume. A lot of the purchases, even if they're happening in person, are happening in a situation that is card not present. So I think, from your perspective, if you clinically look at it, who holds the bag of something going wrong or a fraud, yes, there is a thing saying if I don't have to hold the bag, then I don't worry about it. There's a complacency factor. But I think the game has shifted. It is also about loyalty and customer relationships, right? So if we start looking at all of those layers, I think it's a complex ecosystem. But liability shift has been that promise waiting for Godot. Yes, you have a liability shift, but you have to do these things, or you have liability shift under these circumstances, these industries, right? So those variables are still there. I think these regulations, these programs are meant to, make transaction more secure, but also secure the end user, right? If I am a customer and my card is defrauded and I kind of get saved by in the Visa program, I am made whole. And let's say the merchant's made whole, but there's still that operational cost and all of the other friction that comes in. So I think there are multiple layers to this, and it all comes down to, do these protect the customer well? Because if the merchant gets complacent and they're not doing it, then me as a consumer, I'm going to be hesitant transacting with that merchant.
Absolutely. I think it is. There's been a whole drive towards protecting the consumer. But it's really interesting. I mean, you've traveled a lot. You've been to Europe a lot. The attitude from a consumer between a US consumer and a European consumer. European consumers have been trained to think it's a little bit their problem, right? So, if someone steals your card, maybe you should have been a bit more careful, right? And but in the US, everybody is super used to like, hey, it's a chargeback. I'm just going to call my bank. It's fine. It's not a problem. I'll get my money back. In Europe, everyone's a lot more scared about it. So I think it's bred a different type of consumer in the two parts of the world. The consumer in Europe is a little bit more security conscious, and there's consumer in the US where it's not my problem. It's someone else's problem. I'll just ring my bank. They'll sort it out. Why do you think that happened?
I think, and you throw on top of that I think the banks and the merchants in some of those countries where the consumer is more conscious have more, checks and balances in place. So it's almost like it's doubling down on security versus having a, laissez-faire attitude. I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it. Like I never thought of it like that. But in the US, it's all about reducing friction, making it easier for a customer to transact, right? We used to say that when card not present first came, we made everybody that data entry operator from the 70s where you're entering the card numbers and calling. So, from that perspective, making it easy that when you think of something, you just buy it. And then also trying to give them the comfort, right? That they're going to be taken care of if there's a fraud or something else. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it. But it's also driven by, a lot of these European countries are not predominantly card societies. So, it's also because if you have a credit card, it comes with all of these checks and balances in place. Whereas if the money is leaving your bank, it's left your bank.
Yeah. Yeah. It is an interesting, interesting enough, like 3D secure is now mandated across a lot of Europe and now Japan and other places, whereas US, pretty much the consumers and the banks refused to do 3D secure. They kind of said, no, we're not doing that. And it seems to have worked in the rest of the world to a degree to protect, it's added an extra layer of security, which has helped, whereas in the US, just didn't happen. I mean, I said this in a few of these podcasts, members of my family don't sign the back of their cards, right? I give my credit card to my kid to walk into the bubble tea shop to go and buy tea. No one ever checks.
No, well, that's what I'm saying. It's a false sense of comfort, right? I mean, you're not checking my ID. You're not verifying that I am who I am. I mean, the only place where I get ID'd when I'm making a transaction is the 3 a.m. pancake run in Vegas after a night of drinking. Well, check your identity, but that's the only place, right? Because everywhere else you just kind of. So I think that's the piece, right? When I was working for the networks, like it was hard. Like you just look at it, it makes total sense for you to do card not present, for card not present, do 3D secure. But a lot of the issuers didn't do it because it was just till we got that, invisible passive authentication, when you had to ask those questions where the joke was terrified by Visa and not verified by Visa, it was just a lot of friction. And the merchants were trying to get, every additional field adds friction. Like as a CMO marketer, I kind of am loath to add fields. You just don't want to create friction where the customer has a chance to think about, do I really need that 75th pair of shoes? So you want them to just buy it the moment they think of it.
So, it kind of brings us to the next one, which is there such a thing as too secure, right? So I used to go and meet with merchants and they'd say, I need you to reduce my fraud rate to 0. And I'm going, fine, I just switch off your payments. No more fraud. Yeah. I'm going to, is there such a thing as too secure? Is that, how do you balance friction and conversion basically? So you want to be safe, and obviously at PayPal, we went back and forth. Like some years, the fraud team would go, oh, we need to reduce fraud, increase friction. And then other years, it's like, we need to increase sales, reduce friction. So how do you balance that?
But it's so interesting. Like you're talking about from PayPal perspective, like 1 basis point difference makes such a huge difference in the bottom line, good or bad, right? I always think that friction is a continuum, right? It starts from one area where you just want to know something all the way, just to know that who you are. So there's authentication, authorization, all the way to non-repudiation, right? If you're trying to buy a very expensive stuff, banks or merchants or whomever is going to do a lot more checks and balances. And as a consumer, I'd appreciate it. But if I'm like, on my phone and I'm playing Candy Crush and I need like $10 worth of stuff, I don't want you to stop me and ask me to get something or verify something. I'm like, me, it's my phone. So I think if you ask a customer, do you want to be secure? They'll say, sure, everybody's going to say it. But, a lot of times, like how many people sign up for the 2-factor authentication? Because they don't, because until it happens, a fraud happens to them. So I think there is something called too secure, and that is contextual. I think, requiring me to do a selfie before buying a, in-app purchase for something that I've done over the time is too much. Whereas, not doing, proper authentication if I'm trying to open a bank account is too little. So I think there is that balance, and the balance tips on how much money is at stake. I mean, that's what PSD2 and all, they're all trying to kind of find the best possible way to balance that.
Should this sit at the banks? Why is the merchant responsible for protecting the cardholder when the card is the product of the issuer, not the product of the merchant? Why is the merchant liable, right? Like, why are you charging the store for being stolen from? Why is it not? I mean, the card belongs to the bank. It doesn't even belong to the consumer. It belongs to the bank. That's what they tell us. So why is the merchant the one who's responsible for stopping this?
See, I think this is where it comes down to, like, fraud is such a well-connected ecosystem that, if there is one vulnerability that they find out, they share it. There's knowledge sharing, there's data sharing, there's all of the insights, right? Like return fraud, for example. And I know you didn't ask that question, but this is a person who figured out how to do return fraud, started coaching people on how to do return fraud, and then was hiring marketers because the business had expanded and they were doing webinars, right? So there's a fraud in a box, right? You could actually go to the IKEA or Frost and buy, properly set with instructions on how to do things. I think it's like saying, I have an Indian passport or like an American passport and I'm in Haiti or I'm in somewhere else. Is it the country's problem where I am, or is it the problem of, the original passport issuing country? And you need to be secure. Like, I think as a consumer, as you walk through one particular website to the other, you need to know that certain checks and balances are in place. That being said, I think if you look at, in a lot of, network, we'd call it the four-party model, the MANIC, the merchant acquirer, network, issuer, consumer, what have you. It's like, but it's not four-party. It's like 15 different people, maybe 20, because, there's like, I'm doing the fraud, I'm doing this thing, I'm doing tokenization. You add all of those. And the only person who's paying for all that is the merchant. Like, every time a new entity gets added in the value chain, the merchant has to lose a little more money. So I think to that extent, there is something to be said about how do you create a situation that it's an overarching responsibility, right? I mean, because you talk about APP scans, which is not transaction, but the moment I tell you that, hey, click on this and you're now, absolved of all liability, then does that propagate, more fraud? Am I like less careful about where I'm putting stuff because I'm going to get my money back? It goes back to the breed of consumers we have created.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting one. The merchant ends up paying for this. Ultimately, they're paying interchange, right? They're paying for the pleasure of accepting the card. They're now paying for the anti-fraud technology, and they're paying for when things go wrong. It does seem a little balanced a wrong way, but and technology's moved on, frankly. So I think that's another area we have to talk about. Like, compared to when I first started in this space, like back in 1997, people were writing credit cards down on pieces of paper and typing them into point of sale machines. We've moved on. Like, the technology is far more advanced now, from like device fingerprinting, algorithms. We didn't call it AI, it was machine learning. We call it AI now. Why things haven't really changed for the merchants? They're still liable for chargebacks. The technology is a lot more advanced. Why have the banks not changed? Why has this not got better?
I think because this is the thing. Where is I think the logic for them probably is that the transaction is happening there and I don't get to control it. And you need to know who the person that came to you. Like, in a store, I walked in, I give them my card. They are personally verifying that it's me, which we all agreed they're not. But there is that construct versus here. You've come in and that's where, when you look at 3DS and other things, you're saying, look, I'm going to provide you information that will help you assess, that help you authenticate the customer before you authorize the payments, right? So it's kind of figuring out that two-way, right? Are you who you are, and are you trying to do what you're trying to do, right? So there's that. I think this construct is due for a change, right? Like I said, what constitutes a transaction? I rarely enter my card number. Like, I'm authenticating myself through different ways, So you get to the place saying the merchant is getting, so is it about consumer verification, and who should have verified the consumer owns the liability of what that consumer did versus the card that gets used. I think it's almost, it used to be like, who owns the customer? I don't think anybody owns the customer. The customer owns the customer, and they're going and transacting. And I think we just need to find a way to make sure that we are protecting their interaction.
Well, it's super interesting. In Europe, you've probably seen with phishing and account takeover, the European Commission and the UK particularly has said that's the bank's problem. So if someone calls my grandmother and talks her into handing over her bank details, in the old days, that used to be my grandmother's problem. She shouldn't have given the bank. Now the government said, not your it's the bank's problem. They should have done more to protect my grandmother, right? So it's gone that way, which almost feels like a bit unfair on the bank, frankly. But it's a little bit unfair on the bank that way. But on the other side, it's not really moved on for credit cards.
So it feels unfair on the bank. This is what I'm saying, because the fraud is getting generated not on the bank's website. The fraud's happening long before the customer gets up to the bank. And then there's a conversation. Is the person that's liable is the one that lost the money because their customer got fooled? Or is the person who's liable is the one who received the money because they ended up they banked with a fraudster? So I think at some point in time there is this, and I just don't know how to solve for it, right? This is where you need to have this knowledge sharing. The reason why we're having this conversation, or we continue to have this conversation, is because our knowledge sharing is just not at par with the fraudsters.
Yeah.
True.
So fraud has changed a little bit. I mean, we still have account takeovers, do all of that, but the big hot subjects in fraud kind of for this year being returns fraud, which we'll talk about now. And then the rise of agents in AI, right? So why don't we start with returns fraud?
Yeah.
Why is it growing so quickly, and what can merchants do about it?
See, I think that goes back to that frictionless creating. The merchant are trying to create a really easy to transact. You come in, you just, we want to treat you with, kids' gloves, and we want to make it like, if you bought something extra, we'll help you return, right? So it's good intention to say, especially during the pandemic, like, hey, you don't want to leave, why don't you buy 4 of those and you can return? And there is almost like the whole concept of first party fraud takes such an interesting meaning here, because many people don't consider return fraud. So this is one of the places where the good customers are like, okay, I used it, I returned it, but like didn't fit me. And so there is that consumer ethics, or their understanding of, my intent wasn't bad, but my actions are bad.
You should probably explain like the different types. So different types of return fraud, right? So I think there is the return fraud where I think as you just said, like you basically buy something, wear it once and return it next day. That's one type of return fraud. I think there's the even worse where you buy sort of the Cartier handbag, you have it delivered, and you return a fake Cartier handbag.
Or in certain developing economies where there's cash on delivery, you just kind of beat the delivery guy up and pretend it never came through, or say that you didn't receive it. Then there's another one which is like more chargeback, but especially for digital goods, your team lost, you just say, I never bought this ticket. So I think you just look at all of these layers, but a consumer might say, I bought this and I'm returning this. That's it's like promo abuse, right? But I think unlike some of those things, this has become its own industry. Like, so there's a person that, Brett Johnson would talk about, this person called Noir, who was teaching courses and had a Telegram channel on how to do returns, right? And there would be like instructions on what to say to these Amazon person who's picking up the phone to get them, let them keep, have them let you keep the goods, or ask for this one part so your stuff is free, right? So
yeah,
again, depending on how big, like it's one thing that you wear a dress and you try to return it because the event's over, or you buy something on camera, but to the merchant. Now they have to refurbish it and it loses value immediately. And for some of the things, stocking, all of that stuff. So it's just this ecosystem that gets into,
Do you think people think it's illegal? Do you think, I mean, is it illegal, right? Are you breaking any laws?
Anybody who wears an outfit and returns it or buys a camera before the kid's birthday. I've seen people returning Christmas trees. Do you think they'd like to go on top of on the front page of Wall Street Journal and admit to it? No.
No, but is it actually illegal?
It's not, right? Because I think the merchants have also created this. So this is one of the things you say. They consider it part of doing business, just as you said, right? Fraud is a cost of doing business. So the moment you accept a little bit of, slack in the system, you're encouraging that you're creating an industry on the other side.
Yeah.
Like if I assume that 10% of my things going to be returned and, some of that is going to be genuine and the people are like, they expect returns, they're creating policies. So I think now merchants are getting more strict, right? The pendulum is swinging the other way. They are saying return fraud within a certain amount of time. If a person has returned many times, I think my sister-in-law in India regularly gets kicked out of merchant ecosystem and then she has to open a new account because she returns a lot of things. So, yeah.
Interesting. So I suppose the other area that's hot and fast, probably one of the fastest growing areas of fraud is agentic fraud or AI generated fraud. Right. The fraudsters are fully enjoying the AI revolution, right? They worked out that they can, train some AIs to hit websites. I think I saw an interesting one the other day where they essentially just hit a website for 18 hours nonstop, seeing what worked. The AI was learning how to defraud the website. Basically, every time something worked a little, it tried that a bit more until it found a gap. And then by the end of it, the AI trained itself to be an extremely efficient fraudster. Merchants themselves have been using AI stroke machine learning for years by using third-party tools, but it's a full-on arms race now. So where does this go?
Yeah, it is full on arms race, except one side has rules and the other side does not, right? So I think you look at all of that stuff, right? I mean, it's just like it's never going to be easier to create a fake website to convince people. Like I'm getting daily reminders. Somebody's super worried that I have not accepted the loan that I had requested, and someone's super worried that my Coinbase account, which I don't have, I think, they have detected a bad login, right? So I think all the things that are there, like the ability for you to iterate and come up with a new form fill, new way of attacking, new phishing scam, that's going to be super, I think we're entering a point and nobody knows what's going to happen, right? The things, but I read that and I don't know how true it is that Google Gemini backed out of a chess match with Atari because it realized that it won't win. So I think there's logic versus, thinking. We have heard about those, crypto scams where they actually have a portfolio and they take money and, educated people have lost money. That will look even more robust and reliable, right? And then you throw in the fact that we'll all not shop anymore. We'll have our agents shopping for us.
Yeah.
Then you have to accept bots, right? Do you remember back in the day, like we said, good bots versus bad bots? Now it's like another layer of complexity. So I think it's going to be the hot topic. I think it's also flavor du jour. Like it wouldn't be a pure, self-respecting market if you're not using agentic and AI into your sentences. So I just think it'll take some time to separate fluff.
I mean, the space you're in the moment, right? Identity suddenly become a hot topic as well. Like I have a friend who has a startup who hired a developer the other day who she asked for ID, sent through a passport, totally fake. The developer was fake. The passport was fake. I mean, it looked perfect. It looked like a perfect passport. Anyway, that we worked out it wasn't real as they got the first name and last name the wrong way around on the passport, right? But apart from that, like the space you're in, you're now basically fighting people being able to generate. I mean, you can go into Gemini or ChatGPT and ask it to generate you a Dutch passport and it will do it now and it will look identical.
And you don't even need, this is what I'm saying, like like this, there are memes about, men who are on, OnlyFans and others pretending to be women because it's so easy they just doing the movements and it's getting, there's an AI influencer that got 100,000 followers and sitting in Wimbledon, right? So I think we will get into this whole point of collectively hallucinating,
Uh-huh.
like who is real, who's not real, right? And then so I was talking to folks in the industry, and they're like, merchants are so worried about agentic payments and being ready for that.
Uh-huh.
Plus making sure that they are, they have a fighting chance against the fraud that's coming, the onslaught of fraud that's coming, right? I just think it's gonna. I mean, I might think that it might go back to first principles, right? You talked about some of the things. Maybe device ID is back, like it's a device ID spring because I you could I could- because we used to say that you can't really fake a biometric face or what have you because that's your fingerprint is your fingerprint. It's not like somebody can generate different versions of it. So
So I saw a great one the other day where someone pointed out that koalas actually have fingerprints. Um, so you could use a koala bear to spoof it. So there you go. Watch out for those Australian koala bears.
exactly. So
But okay. So let's talk future a little bit. Where are we in 3, 4, 5 years? Where's this got to?
I think this is something that it's like people have, because of ChatGPT. I think there's also a concept people have stopped thinking, right? There's just this study that was done saying if somebody's writing their own essays versus using ChatGPT, the brain's cognitive power goes down. I think the more you're aware that things could be fraudulent, maybe the more, sometimes the smartest people or the people who are, they fall the hardest. Like you're trying to be extra careful. I think fraudsters are going to use AI just as we are. And I think they're going to use it more effectively. So we just need to be, like, I think it's a defense in depth that needs to be there. I think at the end of the day, it is going to go back to consumers being educated and being ready. I think that's where it's going to be.
Basically, we're going to need a bigger bow. Is what
We're going to need good and smarter people. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time today. It's been great chatting to you. And once again, anyone have any questions, feel free to send them through and we'll forward them on to Vanita. And thank you for listening. Cheers, Vanita.
Thanks for having me.